Folks, what's exciting for me is that I've got people on here that I've known for years, and they were part of the group that was what I called One Transaction Thinking alumni. The neat thing about it is they're going to have some takeaways that they'll say, holy cow, you really oversimplified this even better. And some of you have never seen this before, so you'll get an opportunity to look at this and say, man, I can read my P&L now better than I ever have before. And that's the ultimate objective as we start to see that. So let me go ahead and roll with this and just get an idea of what's happening. I want to tell a little story here before I start. A good friend of mine, Kevin Flynn, who's passed away as of now, but going back to the YPO group, and you saw that might in the 6-minute video that you saw. Kevin had him and his dad owned a casino in Michigan City, Indiana called Blue Chip Casino. Kevin sold that casino for $256 million. So big number. We had a retreat in Vegas, flew on his private jet. It was kind of a cool experience, but the Boyd Group bought his casino. And one of the givebacks that Boyd had, they said, hey, if you want to do a private tour behind the scenes of Las Vegas, we're going to be out there on this day. You're more than willing to bring your group through. So I still remember it. I can probably take you to the place that was there. They took me upstairs, took all of us upstairs to the video room where you could see all the, on the floor, you can see those bulbs that are there. And in those bulbs are cameras. And there was rows and rows and rows of guys watching these cameras, and they can move from table to table and they could zoom in and zoom out. And I still remember asking the gentleman the question. I just said, man, this is incredible how you can zoom in and look at the watch on a pit boss's, arm and see the time and then get the whole view of the whole pit with where they were at. I said, how do you keep track of all the money? And I still remember, he says, oh, Tom, he says, we don't keep track of all the money. We just keep track of the big chips. And I said, well, wow. And then it dawned on me what he was talking about. But as you start to see this, and you start to realize this, so this is just the familiarity. Black is usually a $100 chip. Green is 25. Blue is a $1 chip, and $5 is a red chip. So that's what's there. And as you look at this and you start to realize this, here's a picture of all these chips just combined all over the place, right? And when I do this live, it's a little easier because I can kind of get people to give me an idea. How much money do you think is on the table there? Probably say 500. So I'm going to say 5,000. It goes on and on and on. But the difficulty is that you really can't decipher what's here. And I call that your financials today. And as you start to realize, what we're going to be able to do is I'm going to clarify for you how the financials still should look. And this is what's happening. If I bring the big chips forward, it gives you the opportunity to be able to at least get closer to your guess of how much money is on the table. I don't remember, it was $1,347 or whatever the number was. But I just wanted to start that because that's what you're going to wind up with in the 8 key performance indicators when we go through it. Now, folks, my suggestion is have a pencil and piece of paper ready so you can get an idea. I'm going to show you exactly how you take your P&L and convert it into what I've done over the years in converting it to what I call the 8 key performance indicators. So let me give you the agenda here. Here's a side-by-side picture. You can see it much clearer on the right, really cloudy on the left. So here's what we're going to cover today. I'm going to teach you how to convert your P&L into the 8 key performance indicators. I'm going to show you a 2-branch comparison. I'm going to show you the look of a 32-branch company. We've got all sizes, shapes on today. We've got big companies that are looking at this potentially to put into their own organization. I've got some people who are friends of mine who are wholesalers and warehouse lenders and things of that nature who are looking at this, being able to say, can they help their membership? Can they help their clients through being able to, we know it's tough times today. We're going to show you an example of how easy, and this is probably 3.0, 4.0, whatever it is, of how easy it is to put numbers into our system. Now, for the sake of time in our dry run, I promise you we'll be as close as we can to an hour. But when we did this in our dry run, we had people inputting on their end and sharing screens and things of that nature. It was just too cumbersome, too time consuming. So my offer is that reach out to, if you have your numbers, and we need you to have your P&L and your production report. And I want you to be able to take those numbers, and then you'll just email Tim, and Tim will go through it with you one-on-one. Take 10, 15 minutes to walk you through how do you input those into the system. We'll do a screen share so you'll see how easy it is. I'll show you a little demo today so you can get an idea of how easy it is. And then at the end, stay till the end, we'll give you a bonus for attending and kind of roll from there. So let me dig in. So our BPA stands for Branch Profitability Academy, and our system includes 3 steps. When I was doing, remember, up until a year and a half ago, I was doing private consulting for companies. They'd hire me. I'd go into their organizations. I'd do a branch examination. I would coach their branches on how to become profitable. And I just decided that, well, first of all, there was so much pain in the marketplace. You know, I was encouraged by many folks to be able to say, Tom, bring this to market, because there's a tremendous need for my branch managers to really be able to understand the P&L. I listened and brought it all together with a variety of ways, which I'll show you here in a minute. We're going to convert the P&L to 8 KPIs. So when I was troubleshooting a branch, somebody would say to me, I would be at an event, and they'd say, hey, Tom, can you take a look at my P&L? Tell me what you think. I'd look like a deer in headlights. I couldn't do it. I have to convert your P&L into my 8 key performance indicators, because it'll tell every story that needs to be told. We're going to take that in that format, and then we're going to analyze the data. So I'm going to see where the strengths are and the weaknesses are. And then when we troubleshoot it, we refer back to the P&L. Hey, can you look into detail and find out how many processors do you have? How much are you paying them? We need that P&L to be able to do that. The key to this whole thing is immediate recognition. Nothing's more important in today's market. This thing's changing monthly. So get the data, get it in, and then let's troubleshoot it and see if we have to make in-flight corrections this month, not 3 months from now, because the horse has already left the barn 3 months from now if we try to attack it that way. So here's the keys to our profitability system. We include the production numbers. Now, in today's day and age, 2023, there's a lot of data that's out there that a lot of companies to their branches have already combined the production report with the P&L. Some still don't, but I'm just telling you that we need to see the production report. In the olden days, the production report was separate from the P&L. So we include the production numbers and we include the P&L data, and that's all converted all to basis points. Just realize this: BP stands for blood pressure. It also stands for basis points. I can't get into detail. In the course itself, we talk about how I determined, blood pressure and what the parallel to it was in the mortgage industry. And that's a story for another day. So let me go through this. I'm going to walk you right across the top to what our 8 key performance indicators are. And then I'm going to actually fill in a particular branch. I'm going to compare 2 $4 million branches so you can kind of see the comparison as we start to look at that. So let me just give you a definition as brief as I can make it. We go into this in detail in module 1, which will talk specifically about how you get there. So top BBP, again, BBP stands for business blood pressure. It equals the total revenue in basis points. So we take the total number that you had in revenue and we divide it by the volume. Okay, let me show you how that works. All of the revenue divided by the volume. So in this example, total revenue is $106,000. Volume closed is 4,027,299. We just take the 106,320, divide it by the 4.027299. That equals 0.02639. Rounded, it comes out to 2.63%. Next thing is it's 263 basis points. So this is the language that we talk in basis points. Some people get all confused. Don't get freaked out over the basis points. I don't know what it means. I don't know what happens. Where's the decimal point go? Do I put a percentage sign or not? This is the simplicity that mortgage, even banking, has done over the years. You hear it talked about all the time on Wall Street. So the next category is bottom business blood pressure. Okay, how bottom business blood pressure is calculated. And let me back up here just for a minute. Bottom business blood pressure is all of the expenses that your organization is paying for, except for LO comp. And you'll show you here, LO comp is moved off here to the right. I make some accounting people crazy because LO comp is really supposed to be a cost of goods sold. I show it afterwards, and that was a long and thought out process because I wanted to make a level playing field for the data that we accumulate. I wanted to make it a level process so that somebody who's doing $2 million as a mortgage broker can compare the same size The same format to a branch that's doing $26 million in closings in a month. So that format, whether you're XYZ mega branch or you're, little bitty Tom Ward as a broker, bottom line is the format is always going to be the same. What I found was the brokers sometimes don't pay themselves until the end. So ultimately, I had to push it off here because otherwise that number would be distorted. It would show 0 with a big profit. And I can usually tell a broker by looking at the numbers. So let me go through the bottom business blood pressure. The bottom business blood pressure, again, this is a reminder. This is really important, folks. I say this over and over and over again, because this is where the rubber meets the road. It's the total expenses for the month, not including LO compensation. Total expenses, not including LO comp. So if you have a P&L right now that your total expenses include LO comp in it, you got to extract that out because we're going to put that into a different column. And I'll show you why here when we go through the examples. Critical. LO compensation, the commissions must be separated from your total expenses. The number we're looking for is total expenses, not including LO comp. I said it 3 times. You know how important it is. Folks, this is the Achilles heel right now to most companies losing money, is that bottom business blood pressure number. It's the killer. It's no different than I don't know what the 2 numbers are called in blood pressure, but there's a top and a bottom. The bottom's the one you got to worry about most because that's the one that's going to create a whole chaos in your whole organization. General number, this is what a P&L would look like. You take all the total, general overhead, 158. You would take that 158 and you would divide it by the 5.9 million. This comes out to 268 basis points. So what that means, when that bottom business blood pressure number goes in, what that means is that this is what it costs you to get a loan out the back door. The LO comp is what it costs you to get a loan in the front door. This is Tom Wardisms. And some of you have been on here for a while. You say, "I'm now starting to remember it." And you start to realize, these Tom Wardisms, right? That goes through that. So ultimately we look at that and we say, okay, tell me what it costs. I still remember being at a Lenders One event. I was speaking at a Lenders One event. There had to be 100 companies there. And I just went around the room and I just said, I would just ask the question, "Hey, do you know what it costs you to get a loan out the back door?" And they give me some, Stratmore survey, and they talking money, or they talking this, or I've got 4 employees, 4 non-producing employees go into this. You don't need all, trust, this is Tom Ward. You don't need all that. You need one number. Tell me what it costs you to get a loan out the back door. I had a vision at one point in time in a meeting like that. On their name tag, they would put 263 over 100. And you could walk around the room and look at somebody saying, "How do you keep your expenses at 100 basis points?" And it would just be an awesome, awesome experience as you start to realize that. So always remember this would drive me crazy. The smaller number always goes into the bigger number to come out with a percentage. If you took the bigger number and divided by the smaller number, it's going to completely screw up everything. And trust me, I've done it 1,000 times. CPI, this is what I created. This is Tom Ward's number. CPI stands for critical profit indicator. It's simple, folks. It's top minus bottom equals CPI. A minus B equals C. Can't get it any simpler than that. This is a critical number as you start to look forward. I'm going to tell you what the bogey point is. I saw 90 in all the reviews, and I've got over 1,400 in a database. 92% of the time when that number is 130 or above, the branch makes money. I'll show you that in a slide here as we move forward. LO comp and basis points. Again, we're converting LO comp. Not the struggle that I had was revenue comes in basis points because you set up a rate sheet. LO comp, the agreement goes out in basis points. The struggle is bottom comes in expenses. Expenses come in cash. So I had 2 choices: convert everything to cash, which is what I used to do back in the one transaction thinking days, or convert everything to basis points. Well, it was only converting one number. So I just said, I'm going to convert the cash expenses into basis points so I can oversimplify that. So again, LO comp paid out in basis points. LO comp and percentage. Folks, this is old school. I know I've got some real veterans on today's webinar. Ultimately, old school. This is a trigger for me. This was an 8th category that I added. There used to only be 7. I added 8 about 2 months in, and I wanted to put this in here because this was, especially as LOs started to discount off the rate sheet, that's my indicator to be able to determine that. And you'll see that in a couple of the examples. When the LO comp laws changed years ago, what used to happen would be you would set your rate sheet and you'd say, oh, listen, I want 300 basis points. Mr. or Mrs. Loan Officer, I'm going to pay you 50%. I pay you 50% of 300. It's 150. Game over. Rules changed back when LO comp rules changed. So this doesn't apply anymore. Usually it doesn't show up on anybody's production reports or their P&L. And ultimately, it's a great indicator for me to see a loan officer that's discounting. So it's just LO comp in basis points divided by the top business blood pressure number. You don't even need to look at the P&L. I've already got that data in this subset of 8. The next one is basis points in profit. Again, simple math. Profit is in basis points, the top business blood pressure minus the bottom business blood pressure minus LO comp in basis points equals, that's what equals basis points in profit. It's a pretty simple process. And again, some of you have never seen me before said, wow, he's making this really simple, or you might still be confused. Trust me, you'll get this when I start going through numbers. And if you don't, reach out to us. We'll walk you through it. Volume, self-explanatory. It's for that month. Profit in dollars. This is simply, folks, sometimes you look at profit in dollars at the end of your P&L and you say, oh, there's my profit in dollars. I want to be able to look at this. I can determine profit in dollars based upon how much profit I had in basis points multiplied by the volume will equal profit in dollars. Again, it's a simple format as we start to realize that. Okay, now I'm going to compare 2 branches, and I'm going to show you in that system. So you've got a sneak preview of what those 8 key performance indicators are.
Hey, Tom.
I'm going to walk you. Yeah, go ahead, Tim.
We did have a couple questions. It's been kind of a 2-parter, and if you go back maybe a slide, it might help to show the kind of the general theme of the question is it seems pretty simple. I put a complex P&L in there, and it spits out numbers. Can you? I guess the question is, where do we start? And are there par numbers? Like, what does good look like? Is there any one piece there that?
Yeah, I would tell you, here's what I would tell you. I would tell you that if you can keep CPI 130 and above, you're probably going to make money in the branch. If this number is over and over again, we'll see some examples here when I get into the database. But great question. And it is simple. Don't overcomplicate it, right? It's just, you don't need to spell it out. It's just that simple, right? And somebody says, one of a person that I've known for years, and I completely forgot about it until he said it. He said, Tom, what I love about the way you teach is you have the ability to take something complex and make it very simple. And I think it's probably either God-given or something I learned over the years that's my forte, right? To be able to do that. What was the other question, Tim, or was it the same part?
Yeah, it was that 2-part kind of. Okay. It's a little confused.
We'll get there. Whoever asked that question, if you could just hang on, we might be able to answer it while we're going through some examples. Okay. So again, 2 branches closing $4 million each a month. Okay. One branch loses 5,000. The other branch makes 16,000. I'm going to show it to you in a format. Okay. I am going to show this to you in a format. When you realize it, you're going to say, oh man, the problem's right here. By the time we get done, folks, and this is something somebody said to me the other day, they said, Tom, you just improve our sensories. And I said, well, I don't know what you mean by that, but go ahead. And he says, I could always open the refrigerator up and I could smell there was something rotten in there, but it would take me a long time to figure out what was rotten. After I get done with you, I'd open the refrigerator. I'd smell there was something rotten. I'd look in the bottom right-hand corner. I said, it's the grapefruit right there. And I think that's what we have the ability to be able to do once you see it. So I think when you realize this, you'll look at it, you'll go kudos. It's like, holy cow. Tim, there's some stuff popping in the chat. Hopefully you got it. I don't have to worry about it, right?
Yeah, we're all set with there. So thanks for that. I will grab those questions at the next, after you do these 2.
Okay, great.
Example. Yeah, thanks.
So here's branch 1. As you see it, as we look at it, it's branch 1. And I'm going to go across the line. The date. Now, let me caution you something on the date. The date is the year 1st and the month 2nd. So this is March of 2023. If I did it the other way, it wouldn't, trust me, I did it. I screwed it up. If I did it the other way, 0323, it wouldn't stack the right way. When we sort it, the sorting was off because you had 01, 02, all the way 11, 10. It was all screwed up. So I said, how can we change that? We put the year first, then it sorts correctly. So this is March of 2023. The top business blueprint. Now this is taking the complex P&L, 3 pages, 4 pages, combined with a production report, get all the residuals, or push it off to the side. Once you've input this into our system, you're golden. This number is 264. So the top business blood pressure is 264. The bottom business blood pressure, this is all the revenue that you took in. The bottom business blood pressure is 104. That's the cost to get a loan out the back door, except for LO comp. CPI, remember, A minus B equals C. 264 minus 104, it's 160. The LO comp in basis points in this example for the first branch is 120. I take 160 now, minus 120, we had 40 basis points in profit. I take 40 basis points in profit, multiplied by 4 million, comes out to $16,000. I just rounded it down to the number. How this 45% comes down, as you start to realize it, you just take the LO comp and divide it by the top business blood pressure number. That'll give you a percentage of LO comp you're paying out. So if the model's broken, we can look at it and we can say, if that number is 80%, you can't sustain a business model where you're paying out 80% of $1 coming in the door. No restaurant can sustain it. No corporation can sustain it. No mortgage banker and no branch at a mortgage banker office. Trust me on this, folks. I did some investigation on some of these companies that went down. This was a trigger that happened right there. So now let's look at the second branch. Second branch is B102. This is the one that lost 5,000. I think you can kind of see that. Tim, if I'm in the way, just tell me to move my head down or up or whatever it is, okay?
Looks good.
2303. The top business blood pressure is 285. The bottom business blood pressure is 168. I'm going to show you how they compare in a minute. 117, A minus B equals 117. They paid out. So remember, CPI is all the money you have left over to pay the loan officers and for profit. Okay. So I don't have, if I'm paying out 130 in LO comp, I don't have enough to even pay the LO. So now I got to go negative on my basis points as far as the loss is concerned. Take 13 basis points multiplied by 4,990,980. It equals $5,000 in a loss. Let's look at them side by side. Okay. Let's just compare. The branch who made money actually generated less revenue by 21 basis points. This branch brought in 285 in revenue. This branch only brought in 264. Where the rubber meets the road here is that you can see when you compare the two of these, this branch 102 has got a whole lot of expenses. I'll give you my summary at the end. They only have 117 left over to pay 130. They lose 13 basis points. They did almost exactly the same number. There's a $21,000 swing in between the two. So now you start to realize, like, holy cow. So if I'm going to troubleshoot this with you, and I'm going to teach you how to troubleshoot this if you join our program, is how do you do this? Its bottom line is this particular company. So I can tell you what's happening here. This company was probably built for a $7 or an $8 million branch based upon the expenses. And ultimately they didn't right size the business to what the volume is going to be. Now, ultimately, this might have been built for 8 million because they were doing it during refi mania, right? And that number would be half. 168. If you look at, you double the volume, this number goes in half. So it would have been 84 basis points to get a loan out the back door. Well, 84 onto that 13, they'd have made, 71 basis points in profit. High five me, right? That's where it's at. But this is the issue. So now we need to look into the P&L to say, where are our expenses out of control, right? Do we have unused capacity for processing? Ultimately, that's the killer. That's the widowmaker, right? You start to realize that. Sometimes you've got a processor. If you're only bringing in 7 loans a month and you got a processor who can do 20, that 13, the 13 loan unused capacity is the one that's going to strangle you on the bottom number. Now, we can get in all the details as far as how do you do it. She's been with me a while. She's my sister-in-law. I'm not going to get into all that, but ultimately you've got 2 choices. You either fix this number or you accept the fact that you're going to lose $5,000 each and every month. Folks, I'm okay if you want to accept that you're losing $5,000. I'm not okay if you don't put it into this format. I realize I troubleshooted it. There's nothing I can do. I got a lease on a building that I don't use anymore, and that's killing me right now. I don't know what that number is, but ultimately we know this is the area that we have to fix. Everything else is in line. This is the area we have to fix. So I've got to prescribe for you what needs to lower your blood pressure. Okay. I'm sure you got questions coming out galore on this one, Tim.
Yeah, I got two questions here that just come out really
So just
quick.
as you see that, let me just make sure I got the right slide. Okay. Okay. So before I go ahead, I'll get into my conclusion, based upon what we're seeing.
Right. The first question is from a branch manager, says that they typically look at their numbers, finish the month, they look to the back page, and kind of like what you're showing here, they see a profit or loss. So the question is more around the loss. If I find myself in the red, how do I know what to troubleshoot? So if my bottom blood pressure in this case is 168, really great question. How do I know what to fix?
Well, we know that this is out of whack, right? So it just becomes, I'll tell you the brief story. And first of all, I have high blood pressure, found out it was hereditary. I'll tell you a 30-second version of what I'm going to talk about. I was in Cancun. I go to get my blood pressure. My wife says, call the house doctor. Guy puts a cuff on my sleeve and he says, do you have high blood pressure? I said, no, I don't think so. I had this headache I couldn't get rid of. He pulls it. I look on his face. I wish I could have taken a picture of it. He says, your blood pressure is like 192 over 130. And I looked at him and I said, is that bad? First thing we got to do is you got to know what your blood pressure is. The second thing you got to be able to do is you got to know what normal was. I didn't know what normal was. 125 over 75 or 130 over 180, that's normal, right? I realized how far away I was from normal. Same thing you see here. The cool thing about our system is that you're going to see a database, whether you're just a solopreneur or you're doing multiple branches. You're going to be able to look at a branch that, just like this, you're going to be able to say, wait a minute, here's a branch that's doing exactly the same amount as I did. And they made 16,000, I lost 5,000. What's the difference? The difference is right here. They kept their expenses under control, or they right-sized their organization for the volume that they were doing. They need to work on this here. You can just see it jumps off the charts. So you'll see the ability to be able to compare, even if it's your number, or you'll be able to see it against somebody else's number, but you won't know who the identity of that person is you're comparing to.
Second question, quick one. They ask, can you point out the par that you just mentioned a few minutes back? Where's the par on this? What would it be?
Well, first of all, I need to remember, the first thing I'll tell you is you got to keep the CPI above 130. The CPI is below 130 here. You can see they lost money. They're way above 130 here. I think I'll answer that question when I show you the charts.
Okay, thanks. Again, email, I got some emails that are coming in, Tim at ProfitAbilityCoach.com if you want to email me the questions, or in the chat. Thanks, Tom.
So branch 102, too many people, not enough loans. That would be my conclusion as you start to realize that. That's the single thing I could tell you. My conclusion would be, you'll see this, folks. I've seen, I'm a huge advocate of watching the World Series of Poker on TV. I remember 25 years ago, there was only the veterans that were on there because they would only play live games. Well, today you see the young whippersnappers on there because they're playing 7 games at a time on the internet. So they're seeing hand after hand after hand. I'm showing you, you're going to see, you'll see branch after branch after branch, and you're going to start to realize this is like, holy cow. You'll establish your own pars. There's more than one way to make money. You can either have a higher top number or a bottom lower number, right? And let's go back to this just for a minute. I want to summarize this just to give you an idea. How do I increase the CPI? One of 2 ways, only one of 2 ways. Increase the top, decrease the bottom. That's simple as it gets. I got to get this number higher. I got to raise that one, raise the top or lower the bottom. Let me move here. I want to make sure we close as close as we can to being on time. So I promised everybody we're going to do that. Hopefully you've got enough takeaway right now that you look at this and say, holy cow, this is blowing my mind as we see this. I'm going to show you right now an $8 million branch And I'm going to compare you to a $2 million branch. So let's go ahead. First branch, I call it C101. This is 4 of 2023, April. Their top number is 279. Their bottom number is 39. That's the lowest I've seen in a long time. I'll explain to you why. A minus B equals 240. They paid out 126 basis points in comp. They had 114 basis points in profit. This branch only did $2 million. Take 114 times 2 million, it comes out to $22,000. We see the next branch here, and we realize C102, same month, their top number is only 188. Bottom number, pretty close to being in line, 102. CPI of only 86. They pay out 158 basis points in comp. They lose 72 basis points. They did 8 million and lost $58,000. Look at them side by side. Here's a branch that did 2 million. Here's a branch that did 8 million. High five me. This person here made $22,000. This person here lost 58,000. The age-old story says, oh, we'll make it up in volume. There's no way they can make this up in volume. This is a broken business model. Now, I told you before I'd reference percentage of LO comp. This 84% number, here's what I'll tell you. When you look at 84%, I can tell you this. Usually, 95% of the time, the branch has a business model that's set up to bring in, let's just say 300 basis points. And what I could tell you here is somebody in this example is discounting that rate sheet. Instead of getting 300, they're getting 188. Now, when we dig deeper, we'd run a report on Encompass or whatever LOS system you're using, and we would develop a top business blood pressure for each LO. We could see if you have 8, 4 are discounting, 4 are not. Ultimately, you look at that, you see the 84%, which is what's there. This is an indicator to me, but it's not why they're losing. They're losing money because the old LO comp way would have been I'd only pay out 90 basis points in this example, right? So this number, this is not sustainable. You're going to lose $700,000 a year. Whether you lose that personally or you just say, I'm out of here, I'm going to XYZ, you're going to leave the company hanging with a $700,000 loss. And that to me is not, that's not the right way to be able to do things. So questions, Tim, let's stop here for questions for a minute.
Yes.
Here's my slide here again. When the CPI is 130 or above, the branch makes money 92% of the time. Somebody says to me, Tom, give me one tip in 30 seconds. So make sure your CPI is over 130. Well, how do I do that? It's like, well, you got to raise this number at 188 or you got to lower the number at 102. If this 188 had the same operation as somebody doing 39, guess what? They would probably be profitable because I take 188 minus 39 gives me 147. Then the CPI jumps to 147. This is probably an exception, but you'd be closer to making money because of how high the LO comp is. Questions, Tim?
Yeah, it's actually an LO comp right there. So it's about, kind of the lump sum of what LO comp is composed of. Do you add FICA? Do you have these other costs to LO comp?
It's a great question, but guys, girls, it's nickels and dimes. When we see this, it's going to change it by 1-2 basis points at the most. Don't get hung up on it. Throw it in, not throw it in. Just be consistent. If you're going to throw in the number into the LO comp side, throw it in. If you're going to throw it into the bottom business blood pressure number, throw it in, but do it every month. Just make a note of it to yourself that says I'm including FICA and all the other razzle. It's pretty hard to separate. I would just don't confuse yourself. Don't make yourself nuts. This number is either going to be 126 or 128. Don't make yourself nuts. But a great question. Anything else in there, Tim?
That's all I have right now.
Okay, good. Here's my conclusion. Somebody's discounting the rate sheet. First clue. $8 million doesn't fix a broken model. If the model's screwed up, I would get into processes with that. I'd say, can you walk me through if a loan officer wants to discount, do they just do it on their own? Or do they have to ask for permission? And if they ask for permission, what do you say? Oh, yes, just shuffle, just do it all the time. Yes, okay, yes, okay, yes, okay. Ultimately, it's okay to do that, but you understand cause and effect of that. 84% of the revenue as LO comp is not sustainable. Branch 101, textbook. They're high top and low bottom. Here's what happened in this branch. I was coaching this particular branch, and ultimately what they did was they didn't have their own processor. They didn't even have an office inside the building. They worked from home. So they had no expenses in rent. They had only a loan by loan expense for processing, because if they only closed 7 loans, ultimately they're paying 700, whatever they're paying in cost per loan. They don't have unused capacity. They're getting cost per loan. Now that's going to be higher than you hiring a processor, but at the end of the day, you have to fill the processor. That's the struggle sometimes I see with a branch discounting at the top. Well, I got to give Mary loans. Mary needs loans. Mary needs loans. She doesn't need loans at 188. She needs loans at 279. Hopefully that explains it. Okay. Now I'm going to show you, hopefully I can pull this off, Tim. So can you speak while I'm doing this?
Yeah. So Tom's going to bring up a 32 branch example, and he'll